Chapter 98, Ding Fei Gongzi. Zhang Xuning left. Before going out, he didn't forget to turn around and take the bag that Xie Wei had placed on the table earlier. Lu Xianli touched his chin outside and pondered for a long time, but still walked in. Ouch, hey, why is this still a tantrum? Xie Wei sat on the edge of the table and closed his eyes, and it was only then that the hustle and bustle of the world completely receded from his mind. Enough has happened today. Lu Xian was in the mansion this morning, listening to the movement next door at any time. How could he not know what was going on? It's just that he didn't have much intersection with the Yanji Marquis mansion. Sympathy was sympathy, sigh was sigh, but he could look at this matter very calmly. It's good for them. To a certain extent, he hoped that Xie Wei would be as calm as himself, but unfortunately he didn't dare to say it. Xie Wei didn't speak for a long time. Lu Xian thought about it, and didn't think about how to speak for the time being. However, after a while, I heard Xie Wei calling, "Dayakan." Dayakan in the dark corner outside the door walked in quietly at this time, and raised his eyes to look at Xie Wei. "Sir." Xie Wei's eyes were extremely silent, and he only said, "Find out where Gong Gai Chen is, and ask someone to come over to talk about it. Please come." Lu Xian suddenly felt a little nervous, and faintly felt that there was a strange danger hidden in Xie Wei's words, and he couldn't help but speak. "Didn't you and him never interfere with the river water in the well water?" Xie Wei ignored it, paused, and said, "I'll find out later." Now it was Dayakan's turn to be surprised. Xie Wei sat still. No one knew what he was thinking, only said, "It's time to use him."
星号
Flower Street, Willow Lane, Qinlichu Pavilion. The most famous in the capital is the drunken music Fang. A night is a mess of flowers, staggered, the sound of silk and bamboo accompanied by the fragrance of clothes and sideburns, is a gentle township, selling gold caves. But it's noon. The streets were quiet after the snow, and the occasional maid who went out to run errands for the girls hurried down the road with an umbrella, leaving a trail of footprints and knocking on the back doors of the brothels. In the room of the girl on the red paper in the drunken music place, a soft couch was covered with thick mink skin, and the pink gauze tent was smoked fragrantly, and it hung softly on the ground. Two delicate robes were scattered on the rosewood footrest. A long sword with the hilt attached to it was inserted in the painting jar crookedly. I don't know who knocked over when she handed the tea and water, which provoked her mother's sharp scolding, and finally woke up the person who was sleepy and lazy on the soft couch. A solid and powerful arm stretched out from the warm brocade quilt, and the man lying on the soft couch slowly opened his eyes, which turned out to be a pair of romantic peach blossom eyes, and his eyes were full of charming rough eons. He stared at the light of the sky outside the window for a long time. The girl with the red note had already woken up, so she snuggled up to him at this moment and smiled softly. "Child sleeps well." As the head card of the drunken music Fang, the red paper is very good looking, and at the moment he is wearing nothing, lying on his side, and only a slight touch can hook people's hearts. The man withdrew his gaze to look at her, and it was a rain of clouds. The debauchery of the body, the total indulgence. It was so that the girl at the bottom of his head was overflowing, and he couldn't stop crying, and he retracted his momentum, and when he looked up, fine sweat slipped down his cheeks, wetting the protruding Adam's apple, and evoking a low, narrow sigh. When he was done, he took a breath and got up from the soft couch, picked up the clothes scattered around his feet, and put them on his body. At this time, it can be seen that the young man is very tall, and the lines of his arms, waist, and abdomen are excellent. When the leather belt of the waist was tied tightly, it gave people a sense of strength, and the placket of the front chest was not neatly tidied and a little scattered, so that a strong chest was exposed, and people blushed when they looked at it with relish. Hung Jian's body was so soft that he couldn't do it, and he half tilted his arms and got up to look at the generous benefactor last night, and said a little sourly, Isn't the sun staying for a few more days? The young man picked up his robe and shook it, and there was a kind of unbridled debauchery in his brow. He looked back at her. I've been in Beijing for a long time, and I've slept in the same place for a long time. I'm afraid that there will be trouble. The red note was puzzled. Did you commit a crime and kill someone? The young man smiled and put on his robe, which was dyed with snow-white splashed ink patterns on the dark blue, but he was dignified. This is not yet. What, can't you bear me? Red note coquettish. It is said that prostitutes are ruthless, but in fact, the most ruthless is a man like you, who will leave after sleeping with others. He tied his hair with an ivory hairpin, but walked back to the soft couch. The pink gauze tent was lifted by him, dancing softly. There was a piece that was carried by the wind and covered the surface of the red note, and he actually leaned over, kissed it on the two moist lips of the red paper through the hazy pink veil, and smiled a little wickedly. If someone comes here to look for me, you say that I went to the east of the city to find wine to drink, understand? After that, he turned around, took the sword in the painting jar directly, and did not go through the door, but directly pushed the window open, and jumped directly as soon as he turned over. Outside, there was a vast expanse of snow. As soon as the window opened, it was blown in by the wind. The red note girl's gaze was separated by a layer of pink veil. Rao was used to it in the Fengjia field, and gently raised her hand to touch her lips, recalling the kiss just now. Her heart was still a little shaking. Everyone was gone, and she was still looking at the window stupidly, not coming back to her senses.
星号
When he came, he was with Zhou Baoying, but when he returned to the palace, Zhou Baoying had already been called away by Xiao Shu and others, so only Zhang Xuning was the only one. Holding the bag of pine nuts given by Yan Lin in her hand, she sat in a daze for a long time. Her mind was full of what Xie Wei had just said, but she had just come back from rebirth at that time, and she was only afraid of Xie Wei in her heart, and she only suspected that the other party was going to kill her, and the others really couldn't pay much attention to it. It made her rack her brains and come up with nothing useful. So after thinking about it for a while, she suddenly frowned. What did she want Xie Wei to do? No matter what this person said in the past, listening to the tone of Fang Cai's words, it seemed that this person would not do anything to herself again, not to mention that if she was given another 100 guts, she would not betray him behind her back to find trouble for herself. In this way, she is actually safe. Zhang Xuning suddenly shook her head and laughed. In addition to the heavy affairs of the Marquis of Yanji's mansion, he finally found a trace of lightness from the cracks. The carriage was stuffy. She gently lifted the curtain from the window, letting the chilling breeze blow on her cheeks, bringing a chilling cold touch, and then exhaled a long breath. There are no pedestrians outside. Most of the shops are also closed. She looked at it for a while, and when she had enough air, she lowered the curtain. However, at the moment when the curtain of the car fell, there was a tall white horse running past her car on the snow. The person on the horse had a sword at his waist, and the Xianqing robe was flying in the wind. Xiao Dingfei. The moment the curtain fell, the dusty memory in Zhang Xunning's mind was suddenly triggered, and the lightning was blazing, and the curtain was lifted again almost immediately. But the horse was far away. In the blink of an eye, there was no trace. There was no trace of the man who had gone on horseback. She then suspected that it was her own delusion. The Dingfei Shizi in the previous life only appeared in the capital after Shen Lang died and Shen Ju ascended the throne and returned to the Xiao family. How could he appear in the capital so early in this life? Probably because I was mistaken. The curtain was lifted, and finally slowly put it back. It's just that Zhang Xuning suddenly thought of it. This person is a real bad embryo. If you can find him in advance and send him back to Xiao's house to cheat on food and drink, keeping it can make the Xiao family's chickens fly and dogs jump, and the Xiao family will be so angry that they can't swallow it. The journey back to the palace from the Yangji Marquis mansion was not long, and it didn't take long to arrive. There was an accident in the Yangji Marquis mansion, and the entire palace exuded a solemn condensation. Even Yang's his eye is quieter than ever. What happened at the home mansion Yan's crown ceremony? All the companions were in their eyes. This time it was completely different from the quarrel of the youngest daughter's family before. Zhang Xuning was openly standing on the side of the home mansion, and dared to move against the son of the Xiao family, which was tantamount to announcing that he was an enemy of Xiao Shu. Even Fang Miao, who had always wanted to get close to her, was extremely embarrassed and didn't dare to talk to her. It seems that Chen Chuyi and Yao Shi have enemies with her, not to mention, although they don't do anything to her, they are obviously watching the fire from the other side, and they are waiting for her to be unlucky. From time to time, I seize the opportunity and sneer a few words. Since the home mansion returned to the palace, Shen Zai has not attended classes. Whether he was punished again or not, no one knows. Even with Feng Chen Palace, there are no classes for several days. After all, Her Royal Highness the eldest princess is not there. Do gentlemen give lessons to their companions? Zhang Xuning didn't care about what those people did to her. After returning to the palace, she was worried about the safety of the Yangji Marquis mansion, and she was worried about the situation on Shen Zai's side. She couldn't eat or sleep well. However, once in a while, I heard that Zheng Bao was no longer on an errand in Cunning Palace. So she finally couldn't hold it back, and privately made someone find an excuse to ask Zheng Bao to come out and meet her, wanting to ask about the situation. Zheng Bao is now on an errand in the celebrant supervisor, and the clothes on his body have also changed. He was originally clear-eyed, but now the clothes are even more beautiful, and he only stood under the palace wall and said to Zhang Xuning, "The second girl just didn't come to me, I should also come to find the second girl." Zhang Xuning frowned and was a little puzzled. Zheng Bao smiled, "The affairs of the family, thank you Lord Zhang Shilang for taking care of it." Zhang Xuning then remembered that she did talk to Zhang Boyu during the crown ceremony, but she didn't expect it to be done so quickly, and Zhang Boyu was also afraid of such a special situation at this moment. She was isolated in the palace, right? There was some complexity in my heart for a while. But she didn't take credit, she just said lightly, "Just take what you need." What is the situation in the home mansion now? Zheng Bao is now serving in front of the emperor, and naturally he knows a lot of things, so he said, "The court has been arguing about this matter for several days, and there has been a lot of uproar. For the matter of the Great Seal of Zongshu Province, Chu Zi was so angry that he fell ill and was dismissed by the emperor, and the new Zongshuling was a saint's henchman. There are still some things to be counted in the raid of the home mansion, and I am afraid that it will take some time for the dust to settle, and it may be delayed until the next year. In the last life, it took almost 2 months to decide." Zhang Xuning still felt a little gloomy, and asked again, "What about Her Royal Highness the eldest princess?" Zheng Bao said, "Her Royal Highness the eldest princess's temper. You also know that the Queen Mother is looking for someone to take her back to the palace to teach a lesson." Unexpectedly, after His Royal Highness returned to the palace, he went to the Qianqing Palace first, made a big fuss, questioned the saint, caused Long Yan to be furious, and personally punished her for grounding in the palace. However, after all, His Royal Highness is the sister of the Holy Lord, nothing will happen, and the second girl can rest assured. Feel relieved? Where can this be assured? Zhang Xuning smiled bitterly and said, "I know, thank you." The palace is also rumored now, everyone is in danger, because there is a case of Yuruyi of the Internal Affairs Office, lest it have anything to do with the rebellion on the cusp of this storm, and they dare not go out if they have nothing to do. Zhang Xuning saw that Zheng Bao was also risky. After all, in the afternoon, the Empress Dowager Xiao in the palace spoke, called a concubine, and also called them to read with Yang's his eye, and wanted to go to Yinmei to enjoy the snow. Everyone was preparing, If she went back late, it would inevitably arouse suspicion. But unexpectedly, as soon as she took a step, Zheng Bao actually stopped her. Second girl. Jiang Xuning turned around. What? Zheng Bao opened his mouth, seemed to hesitate for a long time, and finally reminded her, Yinmei admires the snow in the afternoon. If you can't avoid it, you have to go. It's best to stay away from Wenjiu in the Fixiang Palace. Jiang Xuning was stunned for a moment. She was going to ask more. Zheng Bao didn't say anything more, bowed to her, and walked away from under the palace wall.